Yay! Shin Megami Tensei V Vengeance is coming with all new gameplay! Too bad I already poured dozens of hours into that unfinished beta version. Alright, so first off, let me make it abundantly clear that this video is not about burying Shin Megami Tensei V itself as a game. I bought it the day it came out, played the hell out of it, and loved every second of it, and honestly, I can say that it's one of my all-time favorite games. In fact, I loved it so much that I want more of it, so you'd think that I'd be excited to play the extra story and the new route that'll be in the Vengeance re-release of the game, right? Well, like, I might if I didn't have to buy the game all over again. I mean, if Vengeance was just a post-game standalone DLC, then I'd be thrilled to pay for it, but I'm not gonna get a brand new copy just to replay the same game, because I already did that with the original version. I mean, I always figured the game would go multiplat since the entire idea of third-party exclusives is long outdated, hence why I spam so many videos about Persona games breaking free. So it's not like I'm some kind of a Nintendo fan man who's sad to see one of my exclusives go into another platform where the game's gonna run like 20 times better. I mean, I already made a video about how Mega 10.5 should go multiplat, so don't even try to pull that. I mean, hey, if you're gonna port the game to other consoles, then adding extra content's just plain cool. You know, like all the DLC from the original game. Stuff like that. But if you're gonna put a whole bunch of extra story content on the new game, then all it's really doing is punishing the people who supported the original game and invested in it on day one. And hell, never mind the people like me who played it on day one, what about the people who just bought the game? How do you think they feel? It'd be one thing if the original owners got an update or something, or at least a paid update. But obviously this is Atlus we're talking about here, and they love money. I mean, after all, there can't be that many PS5 and Series X owners out there who also don't own a Switch, so this isn't really enticing a new audience to buy the game, it's just trying to get the existing fan base to double dip. And to be fair, most of the time we all just do it, so Atlus would be stupid not to, but this time I just can't bring myself to do it again. I mean, Persona 3 FES was mostly the same game with an epilogue and extra story, because back on the PS2, DLC wasn't really a thing yet, so if you got a game that might have exceeded expectations, then it wasn't really that uncommon to re-release it with extra content. And then once Persona 3 got a PSP port, they added an entirely new female protagonist that changed the gameplay pretty significantly, given that pretty much all the dialogue had to be changed. And I mean, this was porting an old game to a new console, so adding stuff made sense, especially since the PSP was weaker and sacrifices had to be made. Like, yeah, the graphics aren't as good, but there's this whole new can of worms with the female protagonist, and she may or may not be able to date the 10-year-old Ken, but that's neither here nor there. And eventually, Atlus would port Persona 4 over to the Vita with Persona 4 Golden 4 years after its initial release with extra social links and gameplay. Again, this is another case of bringing an old game to a new platform, so adding content and fine-tuning a few things here and there just makes sense and deserves to be commended. The long-term problem with this, though, is that it only taught Atlus the wrong lesson that fans will buy the same games over and over again, which is why they certainly started Persona 5's development with the idea that they'd re-release it a few years later with a little bit of extra content and we'd all just buy it. And of course we did, because we were all conditioned into believing this was normal since we're so used to Atlus doing this in a time before DLC, even though this type of practice shouldn't even have a place in this world anymore. I don't think Atlus had the idea of FES while they were working on Persona 3, but even if they did, at least DLC wasn't even an option back then. In my opinion, playing the original Persona 5 before Royal only ruins the experience of the true finished game and wastes your time given that Royal renders it as an unfinished beta, just like Shin Megami Tensei V Vengeance. To be honest, back when Shin Megami Tensei V first came out, I was a little worried this might happen. But I don't know, I just kind of figured it was more of a Persona scam, seeing as how Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse on the 3DS was a full-fledged sequel based on the original game worthy of its own release. But nope, apparently Atlus decided to apply the Persona method to save themselves a lot of effort, and like, at the end of the day, if they want to do that and enough people are willing to pay the money for the finished version of Mega 10.5, then great. Sincerely, more power to everybody involved. I'm not trying to shame anybody who might be excited or anything like that, because maybe some people don't mind buying the game again. Maybe some people want to play the game like 50 times anyway. As far as I'm concerned, I don't care about the money, because after all, it's not like it's not going to end up on Game Pass like every other Atlus RPG. I just can't bring myself to put any more time into the game more than anything else. I mean, maybe I would have played the new route on Game Pass, but I already played the original game twice, and my backlog's frigged, so no. I'm just not gonna play this again, and if you feel the same way I do, then don't cave and buy this re-release. And if you don't feel the same way as me, then I honest to God hope you have fun. I really don't care. I just don't want to play the same game again is all. What'll end up happening is either millions of people are gonna buy it, proving that it's completely okay for Atlus to keep doing this, or they'll start to see diminishing returns and stop releasing unfinished beta versions of games on purpose, with the finished versions being released like 2 years later as planned from day one of said game's development. And if you really don't see anything wrong with this business practice, then please tell me in the comments why Atlus doesn't tell people they plan on re-releasing the same games with extra content as soon as they decide they're gonna do it. Obviously, this will lead to the original game selling less copies in the meantime, but like, don't you think it's a little dishonest to hold this information back and let people keep buying an unfinished beta version that's gonna be outdated? I mean, maybe I'm insane for thinking this thought, but how about you don't release a game until it's actually 100% complete? I mean, post-game DLC is one thing, but re-releasing an entire game that you're supposed to start all over from the beginning? I'm sorry, but that kinda sucks. And then again, they do make money deceiving us, so they might as well keep doing it at this point. 'Cause after all, at this point, it's kind of a fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me type of deal. These days, every Atlus fan should know that Persona and Shin Megami Tensei games are unfinished beta versions at first, with the full versions coming out about 2 years later. Many hardcores don't mind playing the games multiple times, and some even go as far as to try to convince themselves that the vanilla versions are actually better, despite the fact that we all call them vanilla. Not that they simply prefer the vanilla versions, but that they're actually flat-out better games. It's crazy. But if you do mind Atlus's malarkey, then stop buying the vanilla versions. Like, I know we're all excited for the inevitable Persona 6, but if you don't want to waste your money, and more importantly, time, then just wait for Persona 6 Royal Golden, or whatever they're gonna call it. Or, you know, at least wait 3 months for the game's price to drop 20 bucks, because Sega Atlus seems to love doing that for some reason. Personally, I don't mind spending money on 2 great games, but my big issue comes down to wasting time on a beta version only for the real one to come out a few years later. I mean, replaying your favorite games can be a lot of fun, but if you've already played the vanilla version, it just spoils 90% of the true finished game. Rather than Persona 5 Royal being my first experience of the game, my entire playthrough consisted of me thinking, yeah, I remember this part, so therefore I'm not the least bit intrigued. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's a nice gameplay change. This is convenient. Then like 38 hours later, I was like, oh cool, something new for a little bit. But for the most part, I just constantly kept thinking about how I'd already experienced this before. I don't consider the finished versions to be the scams, just the vanilla versions, and not for the money, because, again, they're always on Game Pass anyway, but because of the time I wasted, that only ruined the true experiences of the main game. And I honestly wish I never played Shin Megami Tensei V so I could actually fully enjoy Vengeance. I don't want my experience with Vengeance to be the same as my watered-down experience with Royal, so sadly, I'm just gonna skip it until I forget enough about the original game in like 20 years and want to revisit it. Still not sure on whether or not I'm gonna have the strength to skip Persona 6, but I'm damn sure not gonna buy it, and if it's on Game Pass, I'm damn sure not gonna play it more than once. The ironic thing is, if enough people skip it with the same mindset that I have, then the game won't be successful enough to get a re-release in the first place. Since I'm probably the only person this irked by it, I think waiting for the real versions of these games going forward is probably a safe bet. But anyway, let me know what you think about the whole double release gimmick from Atlus. Are they going too far, or am I blowing things out of proportion? In the meantime, though, you should check out the video I made about the Persona 3 female protagonist dating the 10-year-old Ken with a cameo from Chris Hansen, but if you'll excuse me, though, I gotta go do some Kegels. Later!